Animal tracking is the oldest form of interspecies communication. Connecting with an animal's footprint automatically puts us in touch with that animal's body and mind. My ability to communicate triggered when I was on a tracking course in the United States. Here I met John Young, a master tracker. He encouraged me to explore my abilities further. Expanding my nature awareness and tracking with John completely changed my life. John is a founder leader of a worldwide movement to help connect people with their natural heritage. Since childhood, John was mentored in traditional native tracking skills and deep nature connection.
You just stare into the footprint in a diffused, kind of relaxed way, and just, in a certain sense, begin talking. The way you need words, it's just sort of something starts to come. And then all of a sudden, out of the track comes a picture, and your mind is filled with an image, and it's a very clear image, and you couldn't have generated it yourself. There's so much information in that 1/1000th of a second, even in the look on the face of the animal looking back at you.
Now, the University of Vermont in the United States has recently asked John to create a course in nature connectedness and awareness. It will be a whole new field of study.
I also work with John around the world to reconnect people with nature and themselves. For a long time, John was the only person I could speak with about my ability to communicate with animals.
Okay, when did you first notice these skills coming on?
It was during our wolf tracking expedition 10 years ago. We were all woken at around 2 or 3 a.m. by the distant sound of wolves howling. I remember the next morning telling you about what happened to me in the night. When the wolves were howling, I had this spontaneous mini movie play in front of my eyes, which was the image of an elk kill, partially submerged in very shallow, muddy water, and the particular configuration of wolves and how 3 of them had walked slightly offset from each other, side by side, out of the water in a certain sort of sequence, and which direction they had done that. And I remember telling you about that the next morning, and a few hours later, one of the tracking teams that were out following tracks and sign found exactly that scene.
I remember that morning. We were able to verify that whole thing. We sat under those pines on that hill and looked out over that place. Remember, we had to take our time going in because the wolves were still there, and we had to wait for them to leave. And I'd just been heard howling. Yeah, I remember that like it was yesterday.
And that's where I really did a lot of research and discovered this whole field called interspecies communication. Meantime, continuing doing tracking and being out on trails and so on, by just opening my awareness and really softening my body and my mind, I would start to have more intuitive experiences.
When it switched on strong when I was 19, there was no going back. You know, and that was that experience that got me in so much trouble talking about publicly, you know, when I saw the silver lines for the first time and followed them right to the deer.
Sometimes it's just suddenly like this line of light appears on the landscape and I just start following it. And then it disappears. You know, it shows up long enough for me to know it's time to move. And then I start moving. And at that point, the rest takes care of itself. My body wants to go that way. It wouldn't go any other way. And then I discover, oh, there's that nice fresh track again. I look at it and I recognize that individual track again as the same individual. And I always have to laugh at myself. When you have that moment of reconnecting with the animal physically at the end of that trail, there's a moment of grace. I have to say, I get a little choked up each time, as I am right now, where I feel like, whoa, what a miracle that we live in a world like this. You know, that this could be possible. And I always give thanks in those moments to my ancestors, to the Creator, because that's what my elders told me. That's where it's coming from. And whether I understand that or not, it's irrelevant. I just feel incredibly blessed in those moments. And I wish life could go on forever.
I wanted to experience in the field how tracking became the origin for this ability to communicate with animals. John calls it intuitive tracking, Anna calls it animal communication. So I joined John and Anna as they attempted to track an eland in a vast wilderness area of the Cape Peninsula.
So when I look at this track now, I see the face of this animal looking back. I can see its glistening eye, and I see a tear duct, and so I see the face. And there's so many signals in my body that I have to listen to, you know. Some of them are playing tricks on me, and the other one is dependable, you know.
Right.
And what I've noticed is that once I lock on, I can even try not following it, and I'll still be following it. So that's how unconscious it is when I'm following an animal.
John, that's exactly animal communication right there. When I'm with tracks or communicating with an animal remotely, there's this internal voice of the mind that runs various options by me. Looking at the eland track connects me directly into the signature frequency of the animal. Even if this animal were amongst a herd of others, I would still be able to find this particular individual because it is her tracks that I'm connecting with.
Then they just walked, hardly looking at the ground for tracks and sign, except very occasionally.
What gets me on the right track is not anything but my body having a desire to go somewhere. So I just feel this need to go somewhere. And it just pulls me, basically.
John, you speak of being pulled in that direction, and for the last several minutes I've been feeling that that's exactly where she is right now. And she's very aware of us connecting with her as well. There's this aliveness in the connection itself.
I don't know if I'm really trying to understand an animal. I just need to do everything it does if I can. You know, get in its space, see what it eats, walk on its runs, lay in its beds. Just really try as much as I can to get as much about this animal as I can from the landscape. When I step onto a fresh trail, my legs will get hot right to the knees, and I'll feel like almost like static electricity going up and down my body, like I've rubbed my feet on the rug or something in a dry place.
It's a connection with the life that has passed through here.
Yeah. In some ways, looking for tracks is distracting. If I look for the footprints, I might get caught in a different animal, or, you know, it's almost like there's too much information on the ground. So for this reason, I let my body do the tracking, and I occasionally check in with my eyes.
And then they told me that they could feel that it would only be a few minutes before we saw the eland. But following with the camera, I started having my doubts. There was not a single animal in sight, and it was getting dark.
It's as if I can see through this eland's eyes, and I feel like she's looking to the west towards the sunset. And I can feel the sensation of a low bush at her back as she enjoys the last rays of sunlight.
That's the one. I feel such gratitude when things like this happen, and I'm surprised every time. It's as if it's the first time, and I feel such like a hint of grace, like the universe is such a gift. I mean, to be alive is such a gift. To share this world with these beautiful beings is such a gift, and it never ceases to amaze me every time this happens. And having studied animals since I was a very little kid, I see that the animals have these skills, and it's obvious that they do, and a lot of researchers will tell you that they do. You know, the phenomenon of directional bonding, homing pigeons, for instance, you know, how strange is it that a bird can fly directly to a point on a landscape, having never been there, you know, being put in a basket and taken on a crazy route to get there. and they fly exactly back to where they came from. Or when I've been involved with radio telemetry studies, and the mountain lion that's got the collar on it's flown the 100 miles directly to the east into the mountains, again into a place it's never been. The cat beelines straight back to the suburban neighborhood where it's been caught. When I see that kind of thing, I know that there's something else happening, and I feel like that directional bonding is exactly what I'm experiencing when I'm tracking. What we're doing when we talk about intuitive tracking and connecting people in this manner may be the most important thing there is right now, because it gets right to the heart of connection. When people have connection, they feel compassion, they see the earth, they feel the other life forms, including the human beings. And they become part of a fabric of we instead of I.